Hi, I'm Karen from Art Party Unlimited, and today we're going to be painting a little oil painting called Spring Lane. First thing we're going to do is I have my palette set up with the colors that you're going to need. And if you've been painting along with us and you've done any of our Bob Ross paintings and gotten the Bob Ross Basic Paint Kit, I have chosen to limit my palette to only those colors that are in that kit for this particular painting. And you'll see we're going to end up with a whole range of colors. So this is going to be a great one for showing you some like color theory and how to mix your paints. And with that in mind, I'm going to start with everything's laid out here, and we'll put those up on the screen for you. But the first color that I want to show you how to mix, I call it Christmas Brown, and it is equal parts alizarin crimson and sap green. And so I have a spot for that on my palette, and I'm just going to start mixing. And I have my number 5 palette knife. You could use any palette knife that you have laying around. And so to get this Christmas brown mixed up, I just have to mix, 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 and then notice how I'm scraping. I'll do that a number of times until I get it really well mixed. I don't want this marbled because when I use it, I want it to be straight brown. I don't want to have like streaks of red or green in there. And it's okay if it goes a little darker or a little redder, but if you start out with equal parts about, then you should be fine. And you can see now I've gotten this nice, really chocolatey kind of brown. And if you were using, you know, not a limited palette and you didn't have to mix this up, you might use Van Dyke Brown or you might use one of the umbers. But as you can see today, you don't have to. You can mix everything you need just with these primary colors that we have in our limited palette. See, every time I do that, I keep finding more green. And so that's why I'm continuing to mix until it's really homogeneous. Okay, and I mixed kind of a big pile because we're going to need a good bit of it. So that's my Christmas brown. I have a paint rag here I'm wiping things off with today. The second color we're going to mix is, I'm just going to call it reddish brown, and it would be similar to like your dark sienna or burnt sienna colors if you were squeezing out of a tube, but we're just going to mix it today. And I'm starting with a little dollop of yellow, just a little bit of my alizarin crimson, because I want to mix kind of a really nice orangey color. And it's kind of more of a burnt orange. It's more toward the red side. And you notice I used a lot more of my yellow than I did my red for that. That little red goes a long way. And so now I've got that really well mixed. Let me just go over here and grab just a teeny bit of my Christmas brown to start and mix that in. And I'll probably do that a couple of times until I get it the color that I want it to be. There, and I've kind of spread out pretty far here. I didn't leave much room for my purple, but we'll find a spot for it. Okay, so that is my reddish brown, similar to a dark sienna or a burnt sienna. I'm just going to pile this up, and we'll be using that a little bit later. Try not to waste any of it. I'm going to get all of it off my knife that I can. Okay, so next I've left a spot here for some purple. And for my purple, I am going to grab, I'm going to move it down here since there's not a lot of room there. This is phthalo blue. And then to start, I'm going to add just a touch, much less alizarin crimson than phthalo blue to start. And start mixing that. That alizarin crimson a little will go a long way to create your purple. I can see it starting to turn. It still looks very, very blue, so I think I'm going to get just another little touch of alizarin. And to test that, just see how purple it is, with a clean knife, I'm going to take just a teeny bit of titanium white and put it in the side. And look, that's hardly purple at all. I actually need to get more alizarin crimson. But better to start out bluer and keep adding than to go really, really red, because then you have to add a lot of blue to get it back. Oh, I can tell that is starting to purple up. Get my white, test just the edge. There we go, that's a nice bluish purple. And I'm gonna leave it like that. So you can see right off the bat from our 5 paints that we had, we now made 3 more. So we have 8 colors. We're even gonna mix some more as we go, and I'll explain them to you each time. But for now, that's what we need to start. And I'm going to grab my small round paintbrush and show you how to get started with this painting. And we're gonna have like a little cheat. We're gonna do a little sketch on here. And so I think I'm just gonna go into my phthalo blue with a touch of thinner. This is just clean paint thinner that I have in my little cup here. You can dip right into your thinner bucket. Mine was pretty dirty today, so I chose to get a clean one. And I just want a teeny bit of that phthalo, maybe a little bit of this white. Very, very thin, because I just want to use this to sketch. Now, I'm using a 12 by 16 inch canvas today. You can use any size you want, but to start, I want to put the lay of the land in. And so I'm going to go maybe just a little bit below halfway on the one side. And I'm going to bring a hill over. And I'm sketching this in because this painting has a lot of different elements, and I don't want to get to the end and realize, oh, I did not leave room for that tree, or oh, there's really not any space on that hill for that barn. So that's kind of why none of these lines are going to be visible at the end, but that's why I'm putting them in to begin with, just to keep us on track so that we don't lose the space to put any of our elements in there. So, and this is kind of a neat trick too. When you're painting landscapes, if you look out over a field or the countryside, you're going to notice that the land kind of swoops in one side, in the other side, so that you have these sort of X's. And anytime you have your planes of land going in those X's, it's going to give you that depth and kind of look like it's rolling hills. So I've got hill, hill. Let's see, I'm just going to show that I'm going to put a tree there. I'm not really going to paint the tree, but I'm just going to put a little bit of squiggle up here, just the teeniest little bit, because I don't want to put a lot of liquid white. I'm going to put some, but that's going to remind me to keep my liquid white very thin. Another little dab, more little blue. Let's see, over here, I just want to put in just a little kind of spot where my barn is going to go. This is not my actual sketch for my barn because that's going to be completely covered up. But again, it's just a reminder that, hey, you're going to have some elements in this painting in these spots so that you don't forget. All right, I have a road. It's going to start out really skinny at the top and widen as we come down. And that's about where my road is going to go. And then let's see, I can also put my fence posts in. You won't be able to see those as we go, but just to get it in your mind where things will be as you paint, it can be very helpful. So I'm just wiping this off and going to a 1-inch landscape brush and dipping that into my liquid white. Don't have a ton on my brush and you don't need a lot, so start with just a little and add more if you need to, because you don't want to get too much on there. And just kind of do that. Remember, we're not putting as much in this spot, so that's why I didn't put a dab there, but I will brush over it. And you'll notice that my canvas, you can see the liquid white showing up on it because my canvas is primed with a very light gray gesso. And you could always prime your own canvases that way if you wanted, or we actually can, if you let us know you need some, we can tell you where to get these pre-primed, really nice grade canvases like the one I'm using today. And so I'm just gonna rub all of this in really well and very, very thin. You'll notice I'm using quite a lot of pressure to do this. And I chose an older, kind of stockier 1-inch landscape brush just so that I can rough it up and not worry about it, because this can kind of take a toll on your brushes. I'm just doing the top part of my canvas above my hills that we put in. Just go right over your drawing. Don't worry about erasing it. That's kind of what we want to do. That was just there to give you an indication of where we're going. And then I'll use whatever's left on my brush to do under this tree area without adding any thick liquid white onto there. There we go. Just get my brush strokes out, and I am ready to add some sky color. Save this because you're going to use that white that's in there. Don't wash it or anything at this point. In fact, I'm going to wipe it and go right into my phthalo blue with it. And I'll show you how I like to do my sky for this one. I'm starting over in the corner, and look how nice and bright that is. I'm going to actually mix. I'm applying a good bit of pressure. Notice my bristles are really bending so that I can blend this in nice and smooth. I don't want to go kind of willy-nilly and get all these little brush strokes. I actually want to blend the sky as I go. And I'm going to go all the way across the top. Because I want this sky to really pop. Like, imagine you went outside on one of those really pretty spring days where the sky is just crystal clear. Maybe there's some big puffy clouds in there, but that sky is like just so blue. So I reloaded with phthalo blue, and I'm going to start from the other corner and go across the same area. And depending on your brush, you might have to spend a little more time blending than I am. Now I'm moving down a little bit. Same thing, blending till it's nice and suede looking before I continue to move to the left. And then this part, it will just naturally start to get a little bit lighter as I move down my canvas. You'll feel your hands maybe start to get worn out a little bit as you're doing this. Look at that. There's a little variation in the shade of my blue, and that's okay. It just gives you the little bit of an indication of clouds. Then as you get down to the very bottom of your sky there, it's the very lightest. And let's see. I'm wiping my brush to get that white off and pick up a little bit more phthalo. Just to even this out a little bit. If you come down and then up again, it brings a little bit of the white back up into the darkest part of your sky. So if you find that you got yours too dark, just do that. Work from the bottom up, and it will bring white up into the dark part that you want to lighten. A little bit of lint on there. Then I just take my brush and at a very steep angle, wipe out any remaining brush strokes that might be in there. All right, now it's time to paint some clouds. Clouds are my favorite. I love painting the sky. And if you haven't painted the sky before, it's okay for your clouds to just be kind of random, because clouds come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. But if you want to make your clouds a little more realistic, then just study some pictures of clouds that you like and imitate those. And before long, you'll begin to just kind of know what the different clouds are supposed to look like. All right, I picked up the wrong brush. So here's the right one. I'm going to use this landscape filbert brush, and I'm going into my clean titanium white, and I'm actually lifting it up quite a lot. And then I've got quite a lot of that white paint on there. And I'm going to think about how I want my clouds. I've got my hill sloping this way and a hill sloping this way. I kind of want my clouds to slope and that as well. And you'll see that in the sky, that kind of fishbowl effect. But here we go. When you make your cloud, just kind of roll your brush and it will start to deposit that white paint. So I lay it and just kind of roll it up. It can kind of just go on any old way, really. And so once I get it about like that, then I will take a nice clean and dry. It's important that it's dry, not one that you've recently washed in your thinner. Nice dry landscape brush and come up to your clouds. And with the top corner of your bristles, just a few bristles, I am going to use those, and you can spin clockwise or counterclockwise or a combination, whichever is bringing the paint to where you want it. The important thing with the spinning out of the clouds like I'm doing is that you not go over the top line. You want that to stay nice and bright, and we're just fluffing out, spinning out the bottom edge of my clouds. Then I'm wiping off excess paint, and I'm very gently gonna fluff in sort of a circular motion. And that gives them that kind of far away, fluffy look. And there's my first cloud. Back to my landscape filbert. It's got a lot of blue on it, so I'm wiping that off so that I can get clean white again. And I have this nice, like, misted out cloud down here. That's where I'm going to put the top of my second cloud. So let's start a line of clouds down here. There we go. Fluff that guy out. I'm barely touching this. If you put a lot of pressure here at this step, you'll cut through this thicker paint on the top edge of your cloud, and that will kind of make it look like it's further away. You'll be blending it in a lot more, which is fine. But if you want your clouds to look like those really distinct, fluffy, puffy clouds, you want to make sure you're leaving that top edge. A little piece of brush hair there. Okay, so I feel happy with that. And again, just a little like composition note. I took my clouds in this direction because I want them to kind of point down to where my barn is going to be. And I add a little guy over here. You can mush these in there any way you want, as long as you're getting a top edge that is bright. And then I use this motion, this little spinning motion, to sort of fill in the bottom of the cloud with some of the paint that I pull down from that top edge. There we go. Fluff the sky. And you'll get better at clouds. They'll start to look more natural the more you study them and look at pictures and see if you can copy the clouds in the picture. There. So that's one kind of cloud. I also want to show you this other sort of cloud that uses the number 3 landscape fan. So this is a stiffer kind of fan brush. Uh-oh. 1 second, I picked up some of my phthalo blue when I only need white. That would have been a crazy accident there. So I get that nice and loaded up with titanium white. And I'm just going to take it and just spin it, kind of like this, and wiggle it around my canvas. So here we go. There's one. And then take my brush I've been fluffing my clouds out with and just fluff. And there's a different kind of cloud up there. And notice I have these going this way and these kind of coming this way. So I have that flow in my sky. I was deliberate about where I chose to put my little clouds. Okay. The next step is going to be to add in some foothills in the back. And for that, we'll be using our purple that we already mixed, but we'll be lightening it to varying degrees so that we get, it's called atmospheric distortion or perspective. And that just means that all the dust and vapor and everything that's in the air makes things look further away because they're misty and they're grayer as you get more atmosphere in between you and the object. So I'm coming into the edge of my purple, and for this first foothill, I actually want it to be a little more on the violet side. So I'm just going to grab just a tiny bit of alizarin crimson and bring down into the edge of my pile there, and go up and grab some good bit of titanium white because I want this to be super light. I need to grab a little bit with my knife actually. That's still a little purpley for me, and if you match kind of the value, which is the lightness, value is how light or how dark it is. If you match that, it doesn't matter if yours is a little more red or a little more blue. And see, I am also, this is also a painter trick here, is you want to keep all these little piles of color. Keep them on your palette as you use them. And then it helps your painting to stay nice and cohesive, because then you can go right into that same color and pull a little bit out of it to mix and make it into something else. And it keeps things consistent. So this time I'm going to go into my thinner, just a teeny little dip, just the tips of my bristles in my thinner. I don't want a lot. Might even pat it off on my rag here, just to loosen that up a little bit more than that. I don't want it super runny like I did that paint that I sketched with, but I just want to loosen up my paint just a little bit. Notice I'm just going tiny, tiny amounts until I feel like it's right. Then, right in this area, I'm going to create, oh, and that's actually perfect for what I was going for. I want to create a hill back here. That's where it's going to go. This time I will pick up a little more paint. And I'm actually going to use this sort of scrubbing motion to scrub that in, like so. Just the top edge. Then I can wipe my filbert off and kind of do a little hula dance on your paper towel or your paint rag. Get those bristles loose at the top, because then I can take this filbert and start to flick up some little spots. And what you don't want is it to look like the width of the brush, the width of the brush, the width of the brush. You want to adjust your angle and your pressure so that some are really short, some are a little taller. And don't spend very much time here, because this little hill it's gonna all but disappear into the painting by the time we're done. You're not even gonna notice it. It's just gonna be one of those little things that adds depth without you even realizing what's going on there. Here, I have a little weird something on there that I just need to get off, little piece of lint or something. All right. Okay, so now I've got my little foothill in there with just the hint of a little forest, or it's a little treed hill. And I need my 1-inch landscape brush that I was using for my fluffing of my clouds. And wiping it off, and I'm just gonna use it to blend in this hill. And if you don't feel like you have enough color, which I don't know that I do, I'll scrub in just a little extra. And then I want to just almost completely obliterate the bottom of this, so it looks like that foothill back there is just floating. There we go. And see that I completely wiped out my little sketch line, but we can still see where it was. Then, using this same purpley color, I want to go a little more blue. So I pulled over some blue and it automatically darkened it up a little bit. Let's see, is that going to be about right? Yeah, actually, I really like that. So I just added some blue to the same pile. You might need to add a little more white, maybe a little more thinner. And I'm going to make another little hill. There we go. And I kind of purposely chose this shape because of how my barn is going to go. But it doesn't really matter. However yours ends up is just fine. I'm adding a little bit onto it, just like I did the first foothill back there. And I'm just going to scrub. Don't come down too far, because you really want this one to mist out once you get your trees put on. So here we go. Just these little flicks. Don't make them too tall, because you want them to look like they're far. And you're just barely pushing a little bit of the top, roughing up that top edge to make it kind of raggedy. Maybe a few of them are taller. And at some point over here, I stopped with the little roughing up, just because I'm thinking, okay, it's a field, more of a field back here where it's flatter. Then take that 1-inch brush again and get rid of this bottom edge. I'm using a lot of pressure and I'm blending it right into what's left of my sky down there. creating that mist there is going to make it look far away. You can do a very, very light fluff. Super light, just a little touch. There we go. I've got two little foothills. And I really like it in my paintings when the hills overlap the bottoms of the clouds a little bit. It gives you that feeling that the horizon is over the hill. Okay, so same brush. I'm going to wipe it out fairly well. And the next step is going to be to add in the lay of the land a little bit. So with a tiny bit of thinner, I am going into my cad yellow first. That's going to make kind of a grayish color. And we'll go a little bit of sap green. And you'll see me just kind of bop back and forth between colors as we go. It's going to get pretty messy. But I want to just re-put in where these are going to be so that we don't forget. There's one. And then here's this one. Okay. Now I'm going into my sap green and a little phthalo blue. That's going to make a little bit of a grayish teal color because of the fact that I already had that lavender in my brush. So that's going to be really pretty. And I'm just going to put this back here. Might even get a little more of my that's giving us the indication, and it should be right on the edge of your remaining sky where the liquid white was. So it's going to gray it down, and it's giving us the indication of a hill that's a little field way in the back. Then I'm wiping because I want that most of that white off of my brush. A little teeny bit of thinner. This time I want to go into some clean yellow and a little bit of my reddish brown. Let's take that into our green. So that's going to change it up. And it's really messy here. Like, don't worry so much about mixing. Just grab little dabs of what you need. It's just going to change the tone. See that? Look how pretty that is. And it clearly is a hill that's a little bit closer than that other one was. All right. Same thing, but I'm not going to grab so much thinner anymore because I want it to be a little drier. So, oop, that's a bright one. This area right here is about where the barn was sitting. You remember from our sketch? And so it's going to start to look a little bit darker. I think I'm even going to grab some of my browns. Let's get this really darker brown coming down here. And now my canvas is dry. You can see I'm scrubbing it right on. And we want it scrubbed on because we want, all right, I grabbed reddish brown and just sap green this time. We don't want this paint to move around underneath the grasses and stuff that we're going to put on top. I'm overlapping that little sketchy line that I made a little bit, just by a little bit. And then my last step is I'm just going to take this and soften these all out. And there is the underpainting for your hills on that side. And this side, let's see, we'll go just mixtures of lavender, green, yellow. There we go. Bring some dark over here. And I'm just gonna fill the rest of this in. Not the road, just the areas where the grass is gonna be. And see, I'm putting this darker down at the front because at the end of the painting, that's gonna kind of pull your eye down this slope. So I want it to have a nice dark underpainting there. Okay, let's see. I think I want more of the reddish brown now. Reddish brown into my sap green. This area. I actually want a little greener than that, so let's grab some yellow too. So see, there's not like a right or wrong way for this to be, but I'm leaving this little bit of a raggedy edge into the road. As long as you have variations in your underpainting as you're coming along, as you're bringing it forward. Then I want what's on this side of the road to be kind of similar to what's on that side. So let's go with some green, sap green. And on this one, you'll notice I'm going to contour my strokes so that it looks like a hill. Your brush strokes are really important. Sometimes when you're thinking about other things, when you're learning to paint, you don't think about, which direction your brush strokes are going. And you should. So as soon as you kind of get the hang of things, start thinking about how you're creating shape and how you're creating the lay of the land by the brush strokes you're using. So if you'll notice, this side kind of is flat and swoops this way, whereas this one is clearly a hill, the way it fluffs, curves over. All right. And this painting could be done all in one sitting, but there's a lot to do in this one. So if you need a little break, this is a really good stopping point to go ahead and, get this far, and then you can take a break, or you could even leave it for some time and come back to it in another painting session if you need to, because we don't have anything else that we're doing on the canvas right now that needs to mix with what's wet. All right, so we've got our underpainting on, and now it's time to add some grasses on top of that. I have my number 3 landscape fan, that stiff bristled one. It was gunky with some titanium white from our cloud, so I washed it while we were taking a little break there. So it's nice and clean, and I dried it off on my rag. And I'm going to go into my cadmium yellow, pull a little bit of that out. That is really, really bright, and you'll end up with a very fluorescent looking kind of green tinge to everything if you just use that with your green. So I'm also going to pick up just the teeniest bit of my reddish brown that we made earlier. Bring that over. Now I already had some green in my pile of cadmium yellow, and if you don't, just go into your sap green and grab a few little dabs. You can bring it over. There we go. So I'm going to use the texture from my fan brush to just start creating some little grasses. And so when I go back here in this area and I just kind of touch and push it just a little bit, that's a pretty far away field back there. Let me turn it over. So it doesn't need to be really distinct. The important thing is that there's a little bit of paint coming off of your brush without pushing so hard that you're losing the texture. And you want to be able to see a little bit of that underpainting underneath. So just keep reloading your brush with those three colors. It was the reddish brown, the cad yellow, and your sap green. Your colors will vary a little bit. And it's a really nice thing if some of your underpainting still shows. All right, that's all I need to do on that side. I'm making it overlap this hill over here so that it looks like that hill goes behind this one. That's all I need on that side because our barn's gonna go there. So I just wanted to put in the grasses, the parts of the grass that's behind the barn. And then I'm gonna do the same thing over here because there's gonna be a tree trunk here, remember? So I wanna put in the parts of the grasses, the texture for that, that's gonna be behind my tree trunk. And I wanna use similar colors for that. This is a little closer to me than this over here, so I might use a little more texture this time. So see, if I lay my brush and just kind of push it up a little bit, it makes a nice little grassy texture. The sun's kind of hitting over here too, so I'm picking up more yellow this time. So that I did a little tap and push, and then you can also kind of just do a little, kind of hold your brush almost flat, and it'll make a little textury, grassy look. And you can do it faster even. Just want to make sure I come down far enough that it is behind the base of my trunk. You can vary the colors. And what you want to be careful of is that you don't mix mud here. If you keep going over and over that, and you don't have your brush freshly loaded so that paint is just coming off as you touch, it's just going to mix everything together, and that's not going to be really pretty. That's going to be just kind of muddy. And you'll learn. You'll learn over time how much pressure you need to give it. There, I'm liking that. Okay, so we've got grass behind the barn, grass behind the tree, which is now a good time to go ahead and paint our tree. I'll be continuing to use this grass brush, so I'm going to just put that aside with the paint still on it so I don't waste that. And I'm picking up a filbert. Now I've got two here. You can use whatever you have. I've got the number 6 landscape filbert, which is really a stiff bristled brush. I've also got the number 6 floral filbert that I use. And you can see they're about the same size and shape, but one is really stiff and one is much softer. And so this time I just feel like using this one. So I'm going to pick up this filbert and go into my brown, and then I'm going to go over here to do a tree trunk. So I'm loading up, grooming my paintbrush on my palette a little bit. I'll do both sides so I get a nice good amount of paint on there. And then I just want to mark, I want the bottom of my tree to come about to here. So I just gave myself a little indication there. And then I'm going to start up at the top. Now, if you lay your filbert brush so that it's sideways, so that just the skinny edge touches your canvas, and start to pull down, see it makes a nice skinny line. And as you come down further, turn your brush so that the line gets thicker. I'm going to reload. Let's kind of fatten up the bottom of my tree trunk a little bit at the bottom. Now most of this trunk is going to get covered, so don't worry too much about it. I do want to add in a few tree branches. I just did that with my filbert, but I think you'll be better off switching to your round. I have a small round floral brush here. Here, I'm going to loosen up a little bit of my brown paint with just a teeny touch of paint thinner. And I'm going to use that just to make some little branches. I'm holding my brush very loosely for branches, and I'm just kind of giving it a little wiggle. The shape of these isn't really that important because it's mostly going to be covered, but the looser and freer you can be, it's actually a really good place to practice making loose, free branches without worrying or being uptight about it, because it is going to get covered. So just kind of play a little bit and get some squiggly little branches in there. Let's see, maybe I want one that comes out this way. That's just going to give me a little indication of where my clusters of flowers are going to go. Now, sadly, part of this cloud's going to get lost, but that gives you the realism of it. It's way back there behind that tree, so don't fret if a favorite cloud gets covered up. It's all just part of the process. Okay, so now I actually need this filbert again, and it has to be clean. So I'm just going to make sure I'm done with my tree trunk and wipe that off and clean it in my paint thinner, which I have my thinner bucket down here out of sight. I know you can't see that, but I'm sure you have one set up also. So get that nice and clean. And I'm wiping it off on my rag here, because now comes a really, really fun part. We're going to paint this tree, making it look like the light is coming from this direction and hitting it. But it doesn't just hit just this edge. It hits this edge of every clump on the tree. So if there's clump, 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 it's going to hit, 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 hit. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I think that's one of the things that was hardest for me to understand when I started trying to paint like how the light is hitting things, is that it needs to hit each individual element, not just one side or the other. And if you're used to just tapping trees on to get the shape and then doing like a little general highlight, then this is kind of like the next step for you. So I have loosened up a little bit of titanium white with some paint thinner, and I need to pull down a good bit of alizarin crimson. And let's see, I think I'm going to work up here on the alizarin crimson pile. So I'm going to take just a little bit of this purple up there, and I'm going to start to stretch this pile over, because I'm going to create a number of different colors up there, varying shades of pinks. Kind of go with my redbud tree here, or I don't know if it's a redbud or a cherry blossom or what, but I want to make a very, very red violet color. And there we go. When I add in a little bit of that thinned out titanium white, you can see it about like that. This is going to be a dark sort of shadow color on the back side of my branches where the flowers are. And so I'm just going to start by tapping with the tip of my filbert brush, and I want to create these clumps. The clumps are sort of lacy though. You can see it's all connected. It's not a bunch of individual strokes. It's a series of connected taps, but that have little sky holes in them so that you can see that sky poking out behind. So that's what I mean by a clump. That's one. I'll reload. And let's make another one. Let's see, maybe we need a clump here. I'm just turning my brush every which way, let it play on the canvas. Think about the shape of the branches, where things are going to go. You probably need to wipe your brush off every now and then because you're going across that trunk a few times, which will make your color get kind of muddled. Put some up here. By turning my brush lots of different ways, I get different textures and but I'm not being too, you can see how quickly I'm doing this. I'm not being too fussy about getting this on there any certain way. Let's see, on this one I'm going to cross back over the trunk because you know, branches do that. And this layer you want to be on there fairly thin. Make sure little taps go different directions and that they kind of stay connected. And then look at that. I like to have them kind of turned down a little bit on the ends of these branches because it looks like they come out and they droop over just a little bit. After we get all these guys on, we'll put some little highlights. Oh, I picked up a little bit of sky color, which makes a nice shadow color. There we go, and I didn't lose too much of my cloud. I'm kind of happy about that. And this is just like anything else. It takes a little bit of practice to get your clumps of blossoms to look natural, but just play. The looser you are, and kind of the quicker you put them on there, the more natural it's gonna end up looking for you. Remember, they stay connected, and you need you need to have little sky holes in there. All right. So if I wasn't sitting down painting with you, I would probably stop here and get up and walk back a little bit so that I can look at my tree and see if it looks full enough and balanced to me. So this is a good point for you to maybe try that just to see, does it need anything else? How's it looking? But from my vantage point here, I feel like that is quite enough. So I'm wiping this brush off. You shouldn't have any like real glops of paint on there right now. This layer was very thin. The last layer that we do is going to end up being a lot thicker. And it'll stick to this thin layer. But here we go. I need more titanium white. I'm just going to take a lot of that and put it into whatever pinkish color I was using. And a tiny bit of thinner, just to loosen it up just enough. All right, so we used a pretty dark color for our shadow. Now I want it to be kind of a medium pink. And actually, you know what I really need? I'm gonna put this down and save it because I don't actually want that yet. So I am going to switch to my other filbert. And because what I really want is a dark color. So get that nice and dry. I'm going to go into my alizarin crimson and my purple. And this time I don't really want to add very much at all in the way of white. I want it to be a very dark color, and you'll see what I mean. See how now I'm going to put this on the back of each clump. And kind of the underside. So that clump has a little dark area now. Let's go over here. The back side and the underside gets more of this. And these clumps are going to start to sort of form into like a solid shape and not look so flat. You see it? This is a clump. That's the back shadowed side. And if you can't tell where that clump is supposed to be, just make a decision. Just make it up. It's your clump. You get to decide. So this is mostly just plain titanium white with a touch of that purple or phthalo blue in there, giving the back side of each clump some shadow. Your tree's already starting to get some real depth to it just from adding the base tone and then the shadow tone. Now I can go back to that brush that I was getting ready for you a minute ago. That has that medium tone pink on it. Watch this. This is going to go in the center. And we can get a little more dabby. Is that a real word? It is now. We're going to be a little dabby because now we've got shadow in back. So we can just kind of put this on, overlap your really dark just a little bit and come out from there. I turned my brush over where I had more paint exposed. Oh no, I just went into my phthalo blue. Glad I noticed that. I don't know if that would have been a happy accident or not. All right, I ran out, so I'm making a little bit more of that medium pink color, titanium white, with the alizarin mixture I was using before. And just continue dabbing that on. Don't feel like you're painting like individual flower petals, all right? You're painting little clumps within clumps. All these little brush marks are going to give the illusion that you've got like a million little flowers there. One little thing I do is at the edge of some of my clumps, I put these little ones that kind of come up like that. See how that looks like a little branch? There we go. All right, now I want to go almost entirely just white. Your brush, of course, already has a little bit of that pink on it, so it'll be ever so slightly pink. You really need a lot of paint because we want enough on there that you can just touch your canvas and the canvas will pull off just a little bit. See that? And then they'll start to mix when you go on top of the pinkish ones. feel like I want to switch to a smaller brush here, so I will. Let's see, this guy's clean. This is my little small round. I think I'm going to go with this for a little bit. Get that super light pink, and I'm going to loosen it up with just a tiny, tiny little bit of medium. Not medium, it's thinner. Now, switching to the smaller brush, you have to be careful not to overpaint things. That you're still just putting little strokes. So this is on the bright side of each clump. From the top and out to the ends. The quicker and the more directions you turn your little brush, the more realistic that's gonna kind of come out for you. Make some little highlighted, bright colored little branches out on the ends here. There, it's coming together. Don't forget these clumps on the back side of your tree that also have a little bit of sun hitting the edges of each of these branches that's sticking out. I just think that's one of the neatest things is when you start to learn how to paint light in your landscapes. Make it look realistic. All right, and what I'll do is at the end, I might look at it and decide I need more, play with this a little more, add a little more detail to it. But I think for now, we're going to call that done. And our next step is going to be to work on our barn. There. So I'm just going to clean off. Well, actually, you know, while we're looking at this tree, let's go ahead and finish the trunk really quickly. I'm going to use the same brush, and going down to my palette, I'm going to take just a teeny bit of my reddish brown. Let's put it there. And I don't want to dirty up my pile of white, but I'm going to take some of this sort of purplish white that I had there and mix it in with just a little bit. So I sort of get this golden color. The undertone is that lavender. And I've loaded up my round brush pretty well. And I'm going to lay it right on the edge of my trunk and kind of roll it as I come down. Give a little sunny edge to the parts of my trunk that I can see. There. Now, on the dark back side, I'm going to wipe off that white and pick up, go into my dark purple pile. Give that just a little bit of white there. I've got kind of a really pretty periwinkle purple color there. And the same thing, I'm going to start and line the point up with the edge of my tree trunk here. Give a little highlight on the side of that. And then the other thing we want to do is I'm going to take my script liner brush. You might have a little detail brush. It's a little number 2 that I'm using. And I'm getting quite a lot of medium on there. I'm going to go into my really dark chocolatey brown here and mix it up so that I have a really loose puddle there. And notice how I'm loading. I'm rolling and pulling at the same time. So I'm spinning that brush and pulling it through the paint to get it loaded up really well. And then I'm going to add some little hints of branches. This can be a little scary, so if you're not as confident, you can just put a few little hints of them in and be done. If you're kind of feeling it, go ahead and add some more. Need to reload a little bit. All right, and that's another thing that at the end, when you're looking at details, you can always add more later. There we go. All right, so that little tree is done for now. I'll just wash my script liner out, lay that aside. Now I've got my small round brush, and what we're going to do is go over here and focus on our barn a little bit. So we're going to get the two biggest elements, most detailed elements out of our painting pretty early before we start filling in the foreground. I'm going to dip in my medium, and I said medium, but it's paint thinner. I'm not using any kind of medium today. And just with some really thin brown paint, I am going to sketch my barn. And a good way to do your barn is to practice it on a piece of paper first or a dry erase board. And I actually am going to have a little video for you that we'll cut into to show you how to sketch this barn. So you can watch that, and then I'll do it up here for you. Okay, so I'm going to use the handy dry erase board here to just give you a little bit of a demo on the mechanics of your cabin. And hopefully this helps when you go to paint it, if you can kind of draw it and envision it as a solid object. But here's what I do. You might very well come up with a way that's better for you. And hey, if you do, post it in our Happy Little Home Studio Facebook group. We'd love to see how different people are doing this. And I know that my husband Brian does it differently than I do as well. But I like to start with the point of the roof. And so I'll make a little shape like that and then come down. I leave that for now. Then this I angle back, and then this top of the roof, it angles sort of toward that one. So you end up with this weird shape that's not quite parallel top and bottom, but this angle and this angle should match. So I did that front and then the roof, and then back here, take a spot, give your roof a little bit of overhang there, and come down. And this line is parallel to that one. And then this one goes there. And then when you end up putting your little door in, it's kind of there. And so that is how you do a cabin. Okay, so it's time to put our cabin in. I've already kind of pre-thought where I want it to go based on where I did my little row of grasses, because remember we were putting in a little bit of grass so that we had grass behind our cabin already done. So I'm picking up just a little bit of thinner and some thinned brown and use that really thinned out paint to place my cabin in its spot. Now, a word of warning here. And I keep calling this a cabin. It's actually supposed to be a barn. So a word of warning on your little barn. Don't start out too big because chances are your barn's going to grow while you're working on it. You know, as you get outside the lines, it's going to just become bigger. And you don't want to end up with this like gargantuan giant barn. Brown. Just get it sketched in there. Doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. Okay. I've got my little cabin shape in there, and I feel pretty happy with that. Then the next step that I like to do to make your life easier is take your paper towel, or I'm just going to use my handy painting rag here, and I'm going to stuff my finger in there and watch this. I'm just going to use it to wipe off as much paint as possible from behind that cabin, because we don't need that in there, and it'll just make it harder for us to get it on there right. There we go. Voila. Alright, now I'm going back to my filbert. I like to use my softer filbert. This is actually my floral filbert out of my floral kit. And if you need help with selecting any brushes or anything, just shoot us a message and we will help you figure out which brushes you need to purchase. Okay, actually I need to dip into my darkest brown, that Christmas brown that we made in the very beginning. And that is going to go, my brush is way too wet, let me wipe it off. That is going right in here. You could also use your small round brush for this. We want it to be really dark in this shadowed side. And I'm just going to scrub it in like we did our underpainting for our grasses and stuff. So we don't need this to wiggle on us. We need it to be firmly stuck to the canvas so that it doesn't give us any headache. There's my dark shadowy underpainting for that side of the barn. Then for the other side, I'm going into my reddish brown plus a little bit of that dark brown. It's going to make a slightly different shade. Once I get that outline on, I think I'll wipe so that I can just scrub in without having too much paint. It's a slightly lighter tone than the front since the light is coming from this side. That side's going to be brighter. All right, now for the roof, I want that to be sort of a gray undertone. So let's see, for that, well this is kind of a grayed lavender over here, so let's take a little bit of our lavender and maybe a touch of this brown. Oh yeah, that's a nice gray. Okay. And I'm going to go here. And here. I like to just do these, block in my edges. Sorry, I'm concentrating. I can't talk and paint these straight lines at once. But anyway, I'm going to get these in there. There we go. I like my brush again so I can just scrub that grayed lavender undertone on there. And that is the underpainting for my cabin. Then I'm actually going to take one of my 1-inch landscape brushes. Make sure it's not got a big blob of paint or a lot of thinner on it before you do this. And I'm actually going to use this to just brush off any excess paint that I have on there. Notice I'm coming down and not going up into my sky. I don't want to, damage my sky by pulling brown up there, but it doesn't matter if it goes down into the grass. Now I have a nice stable underpainting that's not going to slide around on me, and I'll be able to use my number 5 painting knife to put in some barnwood. And this number 5 knife is nice because it's a good size for getting in there and getting those angles right. And just turn it any which way you need to get the job done. And I might use my little round brush as well. And all right, so I just pulled out some of that Christmas brown, that nice chocolatey color, and into that, let's see, I'll grab this grayed lavender that we made. There's some more up there. I'll grab a little bit of white, and maybe I want a little bit of that red brown, and I'm just gonna marble it. I don't want to mix. I just pulled it together. See how that looks like? Just kind of marbled together. And I'll load my knife like so. I do it vertical and I'm just pulling. And I've got a nice little roll of paint on there. And then watch this. I'm going to start to fill it in. I want that a little darker. I'll just grab some more dark, and then for the sides like this, I can just go right in there and lay in the side nice and sharp. And the same thing over here. I can lay in that edge like so. Just going to firm up some of my shadow. A little bit of darker paint up under that roof eave there. And then if it gets awkward trying to get your knife turned just right to get this front done, you don't have to pull it straight down. You can just kind of go like this. Lay it in like it's boards. A lot of paint going on there. I'm finishing up putting on the front using my palette knife of this little barn. I'm making the front the darkest part since it's the part that's turned away from the direction that the light is coming. And just a little word on when you're constructing your little building. Notice there is, I'm going to point with my little paintbrush here. This shape in the front is like a home, I call it a home plate shape. That's the front of your building, but then your roof overhangs that home plate shape a little bit on either side. And that's just one of those little details that it's good to think about. Okay, so now we need to do this other little side, and it needs to be lighter. So I am going to continue with my dark Christmas brown. I'm glad I made a big pile of that in the beginning. I knew I was going to need to do a lot with it. So let's see. I'm going to take some of my red brown and put just a little dab of my Christmas brown in there. And then let me grab some of my titanium white. Don't worry if you get some pink or lavender in there. It just helps again with the continuity of your painting if you're repeating colors from different places. All right, so I've got a little bit in there. I'm just going to establish the straight edges. There we go. Okay, one other thing. I think I'm going to take just a little bit of straight brown without the titanium white in it so that I can establish this shadow up in here. Because even though it's on the sunny side, you're still going to have a little bit of shadow there from your roof overhang. There we go. Now I can go back to that lighter color and just pull that down. Using the short edge of the knife to lay this in right now. Oh, and look at that, my barn just grew a little bit. All right, so this is a great opportunity to show you a little fix-it technique. My barn grew back past my where I wanted the edge to be. So I'm going to take just my little round brush, make sure it's nice and clean. And it's the beauty of working with oils. I can just take that right in there and gently move that paint. And then when I need to, I can go back in. I can lay a little bit of new grass in there. There we go. Like it never happened. All right, so we've got the front, we've got the side. Now it's time for the roof. And we made this gray when we did the roof. Now I want pretty much straight titanium white. It's got a little bit of just incidental other little lavender, a little bit of blue in it, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to take some and put it over here. Kind of cut in the roof. And I want my roof to look like it's kind of like a tin roof. So don't glop this on like you would a cabin in the snow. So that's not what we're going for here. I'm just establishing my straight edges. You should be able to pull that down at the same angle that you sketched it in there. And see those little marks where my underpainting's showing through? That's exactly what I want, because now I can just kind of go over here, get this other edge in, and then I'll just kind of move my knife, pat my knife along the length of the roof to make little. I loaded the top edge of my knife for this stroke. Got my hand turned over just so I can get up in there and get that straight line. And so now I can take just little bits, just kind of put them in like this, and that'll give you that feeling that that's a tin roof with the corrugated metal. There we go. All right, I've got that little bit that where the white came down. I can easily fix that with my little round brush again. I'll just take a little bit of my brown and go right up in there and just kind of clean up that line a little bit. There. And any little touch-up you need to do, this is a good time to just kind of take care of that. There, that grass back there. What else do I see? Just kind of firm up this line on the top of the roof. Sometimes if you saw your knife back gently, you can get a nice straight line. Okay, so there's another little spot that needs a little extra shadow. And I'm going to show you a color that we're going to use later as well. And that's if I take my Christmas brown, and I'll just use that whole puddle there. I want to make a color that's nearly black. And so I have Christmas brown here. Just going to go over here and grab some of my really dark purple from that big pile that I made in the beginning and go into the edge. I'm not going to try and do that whole pile, but into the edge. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but it is significantly darker than the brown by itself. And that, I'm going to put a little shadow in that little corner there and up to show that little overhang part of the roof. And then, let's see, I might even need a little bit under this little overhang, just a little bit of shadow. Not too much, I just barely touched it. Then, using the short edge of my knife, I'm going to go into that black. And I still have some white on there. Let me get rid of that. I'm going to go into this new black that I just made and use that to just pull in a little door for my barn. And I like it, I kind of like it if there's some little lighter colored streaks back there, because it just looks like, you know, when you look through a barn door, you can see the light coming through the little slats that are on the other side of the barn. We can give it a few little details here. Scrape out a little door to the loft up here maybe. There. Okay, so the little barn is done. Now we just have to integrate it into the rest of the landscape, because right now it just kind of looks like it's floating there. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm wiping off this little round brush, and it gives me the most control. So what I am going to do is pick up some of my Christmas brown, and the sun is hitting here, so there's going to be a bit of shadow coming this way. So we want a little road. I'm making horizontal strokes, not up and down, side to side, about the width of the door, very horizontal. And as they come out here, just going to let them get a little wider. There, that is the little shape of the little road. So you can imagine that our road is going up this hill, down that one and behind it, and then coming over to the barn. All right, so that's just blocked in. And next I want a little sap green on my small round brush, because the grasses here on this side of the barn, in the shadow side, they are going to be darker because they are in shadow. And I'm just placing just a little bit of grass around the bottom of the barn. I'm just going to come out a little ways with that darker grass. All right, and I'm picking up some of my reddish brown, maybe a little bit of titanium white in that. And I'll lay in some more color into my road, or my little path, whatever this little guy is. Up next to the barn, it's pretty dark. And out further, you can add a little bit more white. It gets a little bit lighter where the sun is hitting a little more. There, that looks good. All right, so we just wiped off this round brush. I'm going to put that aside for now and grab my landscape fan brush. And I'm taking that into my Sap Green, maybe a little bit of that blue, and then let's tap it into our yellow. That looks really, really bright for where I am in the painting. Like, you want your very brightest up front. So I'm going to tone that down by tapping into my red brown just a teeny bit. And then I'll come up here and do this little tapping. Just this little tapping motion to get the grass in. Make it go right over the edge of your little path there. All right, I'm going to pick up more yellow as I come. And if you have enough paint on your brush, it's going to make a nice little textured grass-like effect on there. Notice I'm overlapping this hill a little bit because then we'll cut that off when we make the other hill. And just go back and forth in your paints and vary the colors a little bit. Down here it's a little bit more reddish. Changing the angle a little bit, it kind of slopes. This kind of comes this way a little bit more. It's up to you. All right. And then this is another good stopping point if you need to take a little break or anything. You can always stop for a little while and just kind of work on, come back later and work on the grasses some more, but there we go. All right, so I'm just going to continue putting in grasses. I think the sun's hitting this a little more, so when you start to think you need it to be a little brighter, start to tap in just a little bit of white. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to come and work on this side a little bit. That side is really getting a lot of the sunlight. So I'm going to go with my red-brown, as well as my cadmium yellow to kind of start to fill this in. Let's just get the edge of this hill established, and then we're going to work on putting in our road before we do too much of our grass. My brush is getting kind of blobbed up, so I'm going to take some of that paint off. And I'm kind of being rough on this brush because I want the ends of the bristles really loaded up. And I can really give it a little push, and that really gets some good grassy texture going on there. There we go. my brush over, some fresh paint back there. All right, before I come too close up to this road, I'm going to go ahead and lay that in with my filbert brush. I chose my softer filbert, but you could use the stiffer one too, but this is just the one that I prefer. I'm going to grab some titanium white, kind of smooth that out a little bit, and just go into the very edge of my Christmas brown so that I get a brown. Maybe I'll mix in a little bit of my red brown so I have a really pretty beigey color. I even want a little bit of yellow in there. All right, get that brush loaded up. And then using the side edge of my filbert, I'm just going to lay that at the top where that road would disappear over that hill. And that stroke probably isn't more than an inch long. And then I'm kind of going back. They're getting a little bit longer each one I go back. There we go. Now, I want to add some color here as well. So I've still got this filbert. I think maybe a teeny little dip of medium. I go into my whatever pinks I have left, a little bit of alizarin crimson. Let's bring that into that road color that we just made. And watch this. We're just going to take it and kind of have fun. Put it in a few places along our road. Just however you want. And zip it in there. Then I'm wiping off and I'll go back. I'm going to need some more titanium white in a minute. That'll be a good stopping place. In just a second, I'm just going to finish filling in this road. And we can do that too. And then we're going to take a little break while I reload my palette with some paint here. There you go. You're going to overlap that pretty pink color that you put in there, but you don't want to completely hide it. And now our road is all blocked in. There, I've got some more titanium white here, and I'm going to use it to start to highlight this path. So the light is coming this way, and so it's going to hit this far side of the road more than it's going to hit this inner side, which is going to be shadowed by the little bump up of the grounds there. So I'm touching the canvas very lightly, and I kind of have a lot of paint on my brush, so it's just it's even almost pulling up the texture of the canvas. Here we go. If you feel like your road is a little light, you can go back with some browns mixed in with some white. Just kind of get that all laid in there. We'll come back in a few minutes. Well, when we get there, we're going to lay in some more shadow and some grass that overlaps the edge of your road, and to push it down into the ground there, so it doesn't look like you have a road floating on the top of your hill. It'll be integrated in. Okay, so on this side of the road, it's going to be more shadowed, so I'm going to just go with a little bit darker brown. So I'm taking the same brown mixture that I had that was super light, and I'll just kind of streak a little bit in there. This is very brushy. This is just a bumpy dirt road. All right. Oops, it's really dark there. Well, we'll see. That might be a good place for a shadow when we put in our fence post. Okay, I like our road so far. So what we'll do now is go ahead and work on where we are going to put these little fence posts, which is this area right here. And so in thinking about where the fence posts are going to go, it's kind of here, here, here. And just like for the barn and for the tree, we have to get the grasses that are behind the fence posts done before we can put them in, because you can't really go in and paint behind them once they're already there. And that part of the hill is well lit, so I'm picking up cadmium yellow and green mixture and just a little bit of titanium white. I'm going to change it up. I have two different fans. I've got my landscape stiff fan here, and then I've got my floral fan, which is a lot softer. So I might try both of those. As it comes closer, it's going to be more detailed. So you can try some different methods for getting your grasses in there looking nice and textury. So that's one texture. I could also use this slightly different fan, and it's going to give me a different grassy texture. So I'm just kind of pulling up with it, and it's giving me little clumps of grass. So I'm going to push hard enough and keep turning it different ways so you don't get a whole bunch of little just curved marks like the just from the shape of the brush. So that looks like enough to put the fence posts in and have the grass on the hill behind them. We're going to need a little bit more light back here. There we go. Okay, so next we're back to our filbert brush. And for my fence post, I want it to be really dark. So I'm going to take the rest of this black that I had and grab a nice, really load my brush up so that it's nice and thick on there with this filbert. And then think about, where do I want my fence post? It's going to stop right about there. So, all right, here goes. Push with some pressure and then lift off when you get down to the bottom of where you want it. And that's all there is to it. Reload. And let's get this one in there. And then this guy is going to be a little smaller because it's back further. How do we want him to go? Maybe. There's my 3 little fence posts. We're getting there. It's getting exciting now. We're starting to put in these details. Okay, so now that our fence posts are in, I'd like to highlight them a little bit. So I'm back to my small round brush and need to take some titanium white. I'm going to move it away from the green that's there. You can have a little bit of that purple in it if you want. Maybe a teeny bit of yellow. Kind of make it a little golden. If you have any of the red brown left. Just make it so it's not bright white, but still pretty close, just an off-white. And this is going to go onto our post. And on the light side, it's going to be really light. This brush is really loaded up. And what you're going to see me do is I'm going to lay it right on the edge and then roll it and keep rolling as I go down the side of my post. And hopefully, if all goes well, that is going to cause the paint to come off on the very edge. So here goes. There you go, clean paint. Come, there we go. We did it. Just kind of rough up that edge just a little bit. There. And I'm gonna actually have to mix a little bit more. I used most of it up. I'm just gonna add some white to what I have because it's okay if this next one is a little bit brighter, but same thing. I'm gonna hit the top and then turn. That's the next one. And one more. Here we go. Oh, that one's pretty. I feel like I pushed a little harder on my highlight. I like it better. So I'm going to redo this one a little bit. There. Okay, now we get to do a nifty little thing on the road side of the post. And this is something you might not think to do. We did it over here on this tree where I made that little bit of a like periwinkle purplish color. It's basically just a little bit of a grayed lavender. And I used just a teeny touch of thinner. And then watch this. We're going to lay this in on this side. And I love that. That just gives it so much, it's such a little detail, but it really just gives it depth. Careful here when you're doing this that your posts don't grow really fat. Like that, see where I just bumped that out? My post just expanded. Careful there. And then if you need to darken anything back up, you can just add a little bit more of your brown. And there you go. 3 pretty posts. And now we can focus some more on the shadows. Add some shadow to this road before we work on our grasses there. One thing we need to do is mix a little bit of a shadow color. So I'm coming back into my purple. I'm going to pull a little bit of that over. And I really want that to be a little more blue. So I'm going to go into my blue, grab some blue. And let's see, I'm going to grab a little brown also because I want to tone it down a little bit. And now that I've got that mixed, let's just see how it looks with a little white in there. Just going to keep playing with this till I feel like it's a good purplish shadow color. Let's see how that looks. There, I like that. Maybe a little bit more of the white. We can change it as we go too if we decide we don't like it. With this, the inside of this road has just a little bit of this. And I think I'm going to switch back to my filbert. Because it's a different texture. And I'm going to muddle this in. I'm going to put a shadow. Imagine out from your post where that shadow would lie. And then just kind of muddle it in. You don't want to paint a straight, really even shadow because this is a bumpy road, so it's going to lay in the little holes and cracks in the road differently than it would in other spots. Here we get a little effect of like a little bump there going up to the grass. And we're going to get some more of our gray purplish color. Let's see, that's a shadow for that one. Let's do this guy. And this one. I might darken those up a little bit as we go, but for now, that's a good start for them. Let's see, what do I need now? I'm going to go back to my landscape filbert. This is my landscape fan. And what I want to do is establish some dark shadow grasses. So I'm going into my sap green, maybe some phthalo blue, and a little bit of that dark brown. And then watch this. I'm gonna... There. Well, I think I might have my road shadows a little off kilter there. Looks like I'm gonna have to show you how to correct that because look at that, I am not matched up at all. So watch how easy this is. I'm just gonna wipe off the purple ones. And that tells me that I should have put the grass shadows in first and I would have been able to line up these a lot better. And I think, in fact, that is how I did it when I painted this the last time. So now that we see where the shadows are going with our grass, I'll do this again. There's another one. Kind of muddle those in. There they are. They needed to be a lot closer together than I had them. And what we can do is get that brush really wiped off and take some of this lighter color and get rid of those. There we go. There, we're back in business. All right, and then I'm going with a little bit of a stronger purple right up against as I come down closer to me, because I feel like this is closer, so this little bank here is a little higher. Or it at least appears a little higher just because it's coming closer. Make sure I've got that little bit of shadow up there. All right, now we've got our darker grasses laid in, and I might even go for a little bit more. So I'm kind of just touching and flicking. I'm getting a very loose bit of texture there. So under the tree, it's going to be somewhat shaded. Maybe down in front here, as we come over the hill, maybe the sun's not quite hitting that as hard. All right. And so that's got most of our dark grasses in, like just the basic texture. And next, I'm going to switch, but I'm going to wash this brush out just so I can start fresh. And then I'll come back and do some textury light grasses. All right, I took a second and cleaned this paintbrush just so that I don't have it too gloppy. And I'm coming back into my cadmium yellow, which it has a good bit of green mixed in it already on my palette, so I probably am not going to add any more. I might go for just a little touch of titanium white. And then, same motion where I'm touching the canvas and I'm kind of almost flicking upwards. And when I do this, I want to overlap my road just a little bit. And I don't know if I said it or not, but I also did that with the darker grasses. Oh, look at those pretty little textury grasses there. All right, and some down here. And you'll notice that a good bit of my underpainting that we did in the beginning, where we put in that really flat underpainting, a lot of that is still showing in there as well. And we want that. That gives it depth and helps our texture really stand out. All right, then on this side of the road is going to be bright also. Maybe not as much right under the tree. Turn my brush over where that fresh paint is. There we go. All those neat little grassy textures there. All right. Make sure you have a nice edge on your hill as well, like here. Remember how I said it would be hard to paint behind these guys? It still is. I'm trying it a little bit anyway, just because I feel like I want a little bit more light back there. Just knock that little bit off that I got on that fence post. All right, so we've got all of our just brushed, fan brush textured grasses in. So I'm going to put the fan brush up for now, and now I really like this part. This might take a little bit of practice if you've never done it before, but this is my number 2 script liner brush, which is pretty much interchangeable with your number 2 detail brush that is also on the supply list. It's just a long-haired, really floppy kind of brush. It's good for signing. And what I'm going to do is put in sort of some individual blades of grass now. And I'm starting with a really dark color. I'm going to put in my darks first. So a lot of thinner. And I'm going to make a really wet puddle. The puddle is still has a lot of pigment in it. So it's got a lot of paint and a lot of thinner. It's not that it's just a little bit of paint and a lot of thinner, which would be too transparent. We want it to have a good bit of pigment as well. And again, I'm pulling and twisting at the same time. And then you may want to find a spot on your palette and do, you over here, and do some practice grasses. And I like to hold my brush very loosely. And if you start getting it going in almost just go in a circular motion and go in one direction, then turn it and go the other way. And practice how much pressure you need to make those little marks on your canvas. I'm going to reload again. And just to troubleshoot in advance for you a little bit, if it's not coming off your paintbrush like that, it probably means that you need more paint on your brush. So I'm going to start in these dark patches. I'm going to let these hang right out over my little shadows on my road. Oh, look at that. The skinnier they are, the better. That's our dark shadow grass. We're going to put some of them in the lighter spots too, but just not quite as dark as these. Like, isn't that fun? This is my favorite part. But I do know it takes a little practice to get these to go on properly, so don't despair. Just if they're not working, go back to your piece of palette paper or a practice canvas and practice. And then once you have the stroke down, bring it up here and get it on your pretty painting. So you can see how we've built layers of texture in here. We had that flat underpainting that was varied in color, and then we had the texture from the fan brush that let the underpainting show through. And now we're putting on an even different texture, these little wispy brush strokes. But you can see those other layers underneath. That makes it look really nice. Get right up along around the base of that. All right, now let's see, I want a few of these dark ones down here. Remember to keep loading with thinner. Reloading your brush with enough paint. So circular motion. And think about how the shape of clumps of grass. Go outside and look at some if you need to. The more we observe as artists, the more realistic things are going to come out. And I know that when we teach our classes, so many people say that once they start painting, they start to see the world in a different way. They really start to notice like what colors they would need to mix to get that shade, or they think about what the different shapes of things are. And being a good observer really helps you to become a better artist. All right, I'm going over here at the base of this pretty tree and put some of these dark grassy blades back here. It's further away, so I'm trying to keep the strokes a little bit shorter. I'm just going to have a few random ones in this area. Because even though this side's sunnier, it's still, there's going to be a back side to those grasses that looks a little more shaded. Maybe a few of those are hanging out over the road too. There. All right, so I feel like that's enough of the really darks. Let me whitewash this in my thinner and get some clean thinner on there, because I now want to get some Sap Green, nice and thin like we had the brown, and go into my cadmium yellow as well. So I have kind of a spring green there. It's not super, super light, it's kind of a medium. And I'm I'm just going to take that into these lighter areas in between. I did not have enough color on my brush, so that tells me I need more paint in proportion to how much thinner I have. If it's not coming off, just make the adjustments as you go. As you notice it's not working on your canvas, come back to your palette and figure out what's wrong with your paint. Because 9 times out of 10, it's on the palette issue. Now, as I come closer, these bright grasses, they're going to need to go on the back side also. Just a few. You don't need to get too carried away. Remember to go both directions. Circle clockwise, circle counterclockwise. And you're not actually making circles, you're just making the stroke on the one side of the circle. But I think you knew that. All right, I'm going to brighten it up with a little more yellow. All right, and these, you could probably play with this half the day, adding in hundreds of little grasses if you wanted to. So I'll let you be the judge on your own painting, how many little grasses you're going to add. But it's probably better not to get too carried away. Step back when it starts to feel done. But before you know it's done, a lot of times, that's the time to check and see if it actually needs a little more or if it's a good time to stop. So I just took that same puddle of paint and I added a little titanium white to it, so now it's even lighter. Look at that, it's just to vary my grasses as I come forward. And these are mingling in there with those dark grasses as well. And look, these are even lighter, just to give you a little change. I'm overlapping my fence post too, just to make it realistic. Oh, look, I got a little bit darker there, so there's different varying shades. I really like that. Remember to overlap your road a little bit as you come down. And we are so close to being finished with this guy. A little more thinner, a little more white. Whoa, that's a bright one. Look, the sun's really zinging that. I like that though, it pulls your eye. It pulls your eye down there. Maybe if you have just a few that are overlapping the edge of your hill, that'll pull your eye down there too. All right, I'm going back and adding some of these really bright ones. A lot of paint on the brush and a light touch as I'm kind of flicking them on there. And again, this would be where I probably would stand up and check it. So if you need to do that, this is a good spot for that. And I'm just going to have to stop because, like I said, you could probably go on and on. I'm getting just the tops of those blades with some sunlight there. Now on this side, we need to add a little bit in. So I'm going to go back to the Sap Green again and thinner. And I'm going to put in some darker green ones. And There we go. Just have a little more highlighting to do on that side. Okay, so I've got sort of a little bit of a darker green in there. Now I'm going to go to my medium green, and especially on the road side where the sun would be hitting, I'll keep on putting in these little grasses to build up the layers. Make it look like the brightest grasses on the edge where the sun would hit it the most. There we go. And if you want some of these up here, you gotta make them shorter. The further you go back, the shorter your strokes have to be. This grass would not appear to be as tall if it's further away from you. But just a few of those little strokes is good. All right, let's see. I need a little bit of this white mixture with the green. And we're just gonna put a few, like really light ones over here. Doesn't need a lot of this super highlighty one. Wow, look at the difference, how the pop that makes. All right. So now we're down to pretty much just the finishing touches. This has been a fun little painting. Hopefully you learned a lot about creating light and shadow and making your little barn and things. This is where I'm just going to take my cleaned filbert and I'm just going to touch my road a little bit. Let's see, I feel like I want a little bit of darker color down here at the bottom. And yours might not need it, so before you do it, step back and evaluate. I wanted a little bit of darker color down at the bottom. And let's see, a little shadow up here. I'm basically just kind of doing a little bit of detail work now, just to show you this finishing. All right, now I also want to put a little bit of a wire on my fence. After I get this, feel this road is done. There, a little bit brighter highlights up there. And yours might not need this, depending on how bright you already made it. So don't just automatically add it. Evaluate before you add. All right. Another thing I see, my grasses aren't really overlapping my road up here. So I'm just going to take just a few little taps of paint to bring some grasses over and push that road down a little bit. There we go. Just a very subtle little touch, but it makes a difference. Now, I've got this little script liner. I'm going to clean it so that it doesn't have green in it and get some clean titanium white. Let's put this in a fresh spot there. A good bit of thinner. Again, make sure you have enough paint, because if it's too much thinner, you don't want it more than like half and half. Oh, I got a little purple in there, but really it doesn't make any difference. This is going to be for your wire. Practice your little strokes if you need to. And here we go. I'm going to make this little wire. I'm just barely touching. And not even a lot of paint is coming off of my little brush. All right, then I'm going to just kind of make it trail off like it's broken. I think I'm going to give it another little, the brush head is just kind of doing what it wants as far as kind of wiggling along on there. There. I feel like this is too dark, too bright right there because that's on the shadow side. So I'll just go in and I'll grab a little, let's see, maybe a little purple and a little brown. I want to dull that down. I'll even do that on each one. There. And that is all there is to that little spot right there. The only other thing that I might want to do, and you can see if you want to do this too, is I'm going to take this little filbert and I'm going to get just a little bit of plain alizarin crimson with nothing mixed in. And I'm going to go up here and give just a little extra pop on the back sides of some of these clumps. And you'll see how that bright red really makes it pop. And you've kind of been sitting with this tree for a while and you can see where it maybe looks a little flat. But look at that, look at the difference. And I'm not using a ton. This is just like barely any bit of paint. And it's going on the back side of the clumps. All right. All right, and then I'm going to show you signing it because that's an important part of being proud of your work and finishing up. And it kind of is its own little skill. It's kind of the same skill we used as doing those grasses, and it requires a special little touch. So one thing you can do is just wait for your painting to dry and then sign it. But if you don't want to do that, pick a spot on your painting where the paint isn't really thick. So like, let's say here. And then go into, I'm going to just use this dark brown because it'll be easiest for you all to see. And really load up your script liner or your detail brush with paint and thinner. And then I like to brace my hand a little bit. Go in, and you can usually get the paint to come off pretty well when you do it this way. If you really want your signature in a different place that has thicker paint, then I would recommend letting your painting dry completely and then going back and signing. But if you want to take care of it all in one sitting, this is what I do. The other thing with signing that people don't think about sometimes, and I found out this the hard way, was if you go to frame it and you've signed it right up against the edge, your frame is going to cover part of it. Most frames have a little edge that's about 1/8 of an inch wide around the edge of your painting. That is the amount of painting you're going to lose. And there you go. Our Spring Lane painting is all done, and I hope you had a lot of fun painting with me and Art Party Unlimited today.